difference of opinion. So it is for those reasons that we will not be supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to take a call and support this bill, sir, and it has been a very, very difficult piece of legislation because what we're dealing with here is a very, very complex set of circumstances that no two parents of children share alike. But, sir, before I continue, I just want to touch on a couple of points and concerns that I have coming from the Green Party today, sir. We've heard very much from both opposition parties, Labour and Greens, about children being at the centre of the legislation, sir. Now, I'll come back to that, but I'm troubled, sir, when I hear that when Materia Ture on Native Affairs television this week, sir, this Monday, talked about cannabis in the sense that it was some form of legitimate income support, or supplement rather, some legitimate income supplement for families in rural areas to look after their whānau, to look after their support the interests of their children. And that in fact some actually shared some entrepreneurial skills in doing so, sir. How can that member and that party come into this House and seriously stand on the moral high ground, the Green Party, stand on the moral high ground that they seem to think that they should occupy and talk about the best interests of children when they will advocate that growing cannabis, and I assume using cannabis, is a good way to support their families and their children. So I would submit that that is just absurd. It flies in the face of their arguments, and I think they should be dismissed entirely. It doesn't surprise me they're not supporting this bill, but there's nothing new in that, sir. I think it's a fair reflection that this is actually a good bill, that they aren't. Now, sir, coming back to the point about children at the centre of the legislation, it's important to note, sir, that this legislation exists solely because the parents of children cannot make their own financial arrangements, that they cannot arrive at a position where they can support their children. I want to make the point, sir, it does not mean that those children are vulnerable. In many cases, sir, that the incomes will be of significant order. It is not about vulnerable children. It is not a welfare bill. It is about trying to ensure that there is an appropriate administrative formula to make arrangements for the financial arrangements for those children in the absence of their parents being able to do it. So, sir, this is not about welfare and vulnerable children. Sure, there may be some children who, in this equation that are vulnerable, but, sir, they've been looked after in other ways. But first and foremost, this is about their children not being able to agree. So when we come to the formula, and much has been made about that, how do we get that formula right? Well, sir, I want to echo the comments of Minister Dunn when he says that we can't look to have a more inclusive formula in terms of circumstance without a formula that is more complex. It's just, the two don't work. They are not mutually exclusive. If we want a formula that's more reflective of the diversity of different arrangements, it's inherent that that formula will become more complex. But it is not that people have to sit down and work that out on their calculator, sir. That is taken care of for them. And, sir, I think it's very, very important to point out that it's about getting that balance right. And I don't think any member can come to this House and say, well, the way it was is as good as it gets, because quite simply it wasn't. And, sir, the point about the formula, I think it's very important to note that what we're also doing here, sir, aside from that trade-off on the formula, is ensuring that it's more reflective of circumstances, the life circumstances that are quite different from when this law was first introduced. The formula is far more equitable and takes into account shared care arrangements, which are far more commonplace. And that is something that obviously we should be encouraging, notwithstanding the fact that there's some 210,000 people, children, that are subject to this, and that's far too high. Sir, but the 28% threshold versus the 40% I think is a good move, and I think taking into account the financial circumstances of both parents is more equitable. I also think that when we look at the expenditure of raising a child, sir, that is also very important and covered off in this bill very well. Sir, I just, in closing, want to echo the comments of Minister Dunn when he said, first and foremost, it is the responsibility of parents to try and get this right. Do not use child support as a default setting. Let's try and support those families to get it right in the first place. Mr Speaker, I have no hesitation in commending this bill to the House.
Split call. Sue Moroney, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak to the third